podcast for fundraising operations professionals. Hosted by FundMiner co-founders Chelsea Lamego and Alejandro Stevenson-Duran.
Welcome to the Impact Unplugged podcast. We're your hosts, Chelsea Lamego
and Alejandro Stevenson. Tune into the Impact Unplugged podcast, where we share advancement and nonprofit best practices and trends from industry experts.
Today, we have the honor of interviewing Jenna Goodman, co-founder and CEO of Generous Change, and we'll be talking about aligning advancement with academic partners. Jenna is the co-founder and CEO of Generous Change, a company obsessed with providing fundraisers, managers, and academic leaders and entire advancement teams tactical tools, simple and actionable strategies in fun and inspirational ways to help them raise more money and change the world. She's led more than 3,000 advancement professionals through her course, Fundraisers University, and facilitated workshops for over 68 universities across the country. So Jenna, you've trained over 3,000 advancement professionals, and including many academic leaders, on training them and helping them understand the work that we do as advancement professionals and getting them aligned on goals. So why should advancement teams prioritize building relationships with their academic partners?
Chelsea and Alejandro, thank you, first of all, for having me as a part of this amazing conversation. As you said, I am obsessed with this topic, so I'm really grateful to be here. And to your question, Chelsea, why should advancement teams prioritize building relationships with academic partners? I mean, honestly, you can't do this work without academic partners. And it is so critical to be, as a fundraiser especially, to be that translator between the university and donors. And in order to do that, you have to be a content expert. You have to ask hard questions. You have to dig in. You have to be as curious with the university as you are with donors. And it's not easy. I think we assume that academic leaders understand fundraising, and they don't. They don't. It is a mysterious, tough, confusing industry. And so it is up to us on the advancement side to help academic leaders and campus partners to really understand what it is that we do in fundraising and how to actually communicate better with donors.
And in your experience, do you have, or can you give our listeners some examples of when you've seen these relationships and partnerships work really well? And on the flip side, maybe some examples of when you've seen it not work well or it's dysfunctional.
Sure. I think that relationships that work well are relationships between fundraisers and campus partners that have clear expectations, where role clarity is key. So being able to define what it is that you each contribute in those relationships with donors, and to communicate, because that is the key to demonstrating to donors that you're all on the same page, that you have a clear strategy, that you actually understand what it is that, donors want to hear, that you're providing impact and transformation, and really communicating clearly together so that you can communicate clearly with donors. So I think that those clear expectations, I probably just said the word clear about 45 times, but when you have that clarity and you can actually define what you each bring to those conversations, to those relationships, I think that those are the kinds of partnerships that actually work. Dysfunctional would be not communicating, would be a lack of clarity and understanding what you each bring to fundraising. And to be honest, Chelsea, I feel like advancement, like I said earlier, could do a much better job setting those clear expectations, helping to define what everybody's role is in fundraising. And I think not assuming that campus partners understand donors. That is advancement's jam. That is your expertise, is to be able to say and to clearly identify what donors need and what they want and what they're looking for and the kind of change that they want to make in the world. And so being able to articulate that to campus partners, I think, is one of the most important roles that we can provide. I don't think that anyone is doing it perfectly. I think there's always room to grow. I think that because we're often in totally separate buildings, doing totally separate things, that we can easily be siloed. So it really is important to have that communication and those, defined roles, and to revisit it as much as we possibly can.
And I love too that you brought up the donor in this, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we are providing a seamless donor experience, right? And when donors give to the organization, they're not thinking I'm giving to advancement or I'm giving to this unit, and I need to communicate with both differently. They're thinking I'm giving to the organization to support this initiative. And their expectation is that it's all going to happen smoothly and seamlessly. And so the onus is really on us in advancement and on our academic and campus partners to make sure that we have those strong relationships and processes so that it feels seamless to the donor.
Absolutely. I mean, Chelsea, you're so right. I mean, most donors don't want their first experience with giving to be with advancement. They actually want it to be with the university. They want to have those connections with faculty, with staff, with students, with other alums. And so it is a tough push and pull, where advancement's entire job is for the university and representing donors at the same time. It's a tough middle position to be in, but it is about the donor. And in order to do that work really well, you have to be able to translate what's happening on campus in ways that donors, people who may not have been back to campus for decades, or who are friends of the university who don't actually know what's happening, to be able to translate the amazing things, the amazing work, the research, the kinds of impacts that students are having on the world. That is advancement's job. And it is donor-centric, absolutely.
It's awesome, Jenna. And taking a step back for just a minute here, it's amazing to see how you and Generous Change has really equipped fundraisers and fundraising partners, more than 3,000 of them for a long time now. Curious, how did you get started, and what drove you into this space?
Alejandro, I feel like we need about 4 podcasts for me to. Let me do the shortest version possible. I fell into fundraising like most people do. It was completely accidental. I had the amazing chance to own a little drive-through coffee shop while I was still in college. So when I was selling that coffee shop, I realized I had to get a job. And luckily, I had a lot of my customers were actually from my alma mater, so University of Central Missouri, and they encouraged me to apply for a fundraising position. And I had no idea what fundraising was. It was, the job was a development director, and as many of our job descriptions are, it was pretty vague. I didn't totally understand what development was until I was in the interview. And finally, we were talking about asking for money. And man, they took a chance on me and saw that I think I had transferable skills and felt like I could confidently talk to other alumni about my experience. And so they hired me, and I was there for 2 years. And I had the chance to work with a really amazing dean, and I felt like we were just kind of figuring it out together. And then I applied for a position at the University of Kansas in 2008, and I luckily got that position. And my husband and I moved to Lawrence, Kansas, and I was there for 10 years working for KU and the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. And I had the chance to become a manager and to actually lead my team. And in that opportunity, I was determined to do it differently. I wanted to hire and train people in a way that actually clarified all of those things that I wish I had learned so much sooner in my fundraising career. And so I basically just kind of wrote a manual. I really, tried to go back to the very beginning and remember all the feelings I had about fundraising, all the questions that I had, all the really specific language that I wish I'd known, and just wrote it all out. And basically, kind of created this manual for my team. And then I had the chance to present about that with my boss at the time, who became my business partner, Nancy Jackson. We presented at a case conference in 2016 about some of these things. And it felt like half the room came up and asked us a million questions and took all of our crappy Word documents that we had printed as part of our presentation. And it was really in that moment that we realized everybody is craving this. Like, we all wish we'd had more tools and training earlier in our careers. And not just earlier, but like in mid-career and even being seasoned. You're always looking for new ideas and just new ways to do things, new inspiration. And so it took a year to get the courage to leave our really phenomenal positions at KU, but we did it and started Generous Change in 2017. So it's been almost 7 years.
That's amazing. And 3,000 plus and counting fundraisers getting the benefits of those decisions. Love that, Jenna. When you think back on that first management position that you were taking, do you remember what are some of the things that you would recommend your team specifically? Anything that can be generalized to advancement professionals that they can do to build upon those relationships with academic leaders that are outside of advancement. Do you remember any of those, going back to that conversation around the importance of having strong relationship with campus partners? What are some of the things that you look back to your experiences, especially that experiences first as a manager, that you recommended and perhaps that made their way into some of your seminars through Generous Change?
Yeah, I actually learned a lot by failing. So I actually was hoping that by, really thinking about some of the things I wish I had done better, that I could provide some tools for my team and for, future advancement professionals and fundraisers in thinking about those campus partnerships. I was lucky in that first position with Central Missouri to have a really wonderful dean. Like I said, she was curious and thoughtful and kind and brave, willing to just travel and try things and talk to people. And I think I thought that was like common because it was my first experience. And then going to a university where I actually had 56 departments and programs in the liberal arts and sciences. So it was not just one dean, it was a dean and 5 associate deans and 56 program directors and chairs, which was like its own university in one constituency. And as you might imagine, a variety of experience with fundraising and with donors. And so I realized, I think a little later than I should have, how much setting expectations and having that role clarity and showing up as an expert was really critical. And I wish I had had more confidence much earlier to be able to start those relationships with chairs and directors and associate deans and deans as an expert, being able to assert, my role as an expert in donors and to be able to say, here's what I'm talking to donors about. Help me to make this better. Help me to articulate impact. Help me to understand how much things cost. Help me to really get some stories to be able to share with donors. I think instead I showed up expecting that faculty understood. fundraising, and they don't. So that's some of the tools that I wanted my team and that I want fundraisers now to think about are really to be able to bring examples. It can be a real life donor scenario where you can show a dean, someone who has started engaging with the university, maybe 20 years ago, and their path, how they made it to become a major gift donor. And, if you're doing good record keeping, that stuff exists in the system, and you're able to see, maybe they started by giving a $50 gift. And then 5 years later, they gave a $100 gift. And then maybe they started every year giving a $250 gift. And then finally, a development director reached out and, had a conversation about a major gift and introduced them to a faculty member, a dean, an alum. They're served on a board. I mean, just being able to show the progression of real life donors, I think is super helpful. And not making assumptions that faculty understand the path that a donor takes with, the university, and showing that it takes a lot of time and effort and communication and impact to help donors to feel connected to the university.
Love that, Jen. And I think going back to that idea on emphasizing setting the right expectations, making sure there's also the awareness as far as on the philanthropy side, all that it takes. But even after you get a major donor to onboard and support your mission, how can you make sure you do right with them, and setting the right expectations on what is needed from that specific program director is huge. We were actually in ADRP not too long ago, and there was a great session that was talking about campus partners, and one quote that really stuck with me was this: great fences or big fences make for great neighbors, right? And she was talking about how setting the right expectations from advancement towards all these other departments within an organization can really make sure that there's no surprises at the end. So I love your emphasis on setting the right expectations and making sure that folks are on the same page, because I think that's usually easier said than done. With that, Jenna, what do you think are some tools or systems that help it make easier for both sides of the parties to set the right expectations and make sure that they have the right relationship between academic leader and advancement? So, any tools or resources that you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously what you all are providing with FundMiner is an amazing tool. Really being able to, if someone has established a fund, I think that stewardship is one of the, least emphasized parts of fundraising sometimes, which is horribly unfortunate because the ability to demonstrate the impact that someone's gift has had is, it's in the numbers sometimes. It's being able to actually identify, what have we done with your money? How can we show what we've spent this money on? How can we show how many students, how many faculty, over how many years have actually been impacted by your gift? That is huge. It's so important to be able to articulate that impact to a donor. And oftentimes faculty are coming in, building on the shoulders of faculty before them. And so they weren't a part of establishing those funds. So their ability to be great stewards of those gifts is really critical. So I feel like that's one of the most important pieces, is having the data, really being able to clearly show what someone's money has done, and then helping faculty to articulate that in a conversation. It's one thing to send a report, and to have the numbers. It's another thing to actually sit down and have a face-to-face conversation about, this is what your money has done. And sometimes it's about being honest that we haven't been able to spend the money, or, this purpose that you'd established this fund for, unfortunately, it's no longer relevant, because it's 2024. And so just being able to clearly set those expectations and help faculty to be the best stewards they can possibly be, and to be honest, and to help to create actual partnerships with donors, so that it doesn't feel transactional. It really does feel like we're in this together, and this is a partnership. So I think your tool is insanely important. I think data is always critical. Anytime you can show what we know, and what we don't know, where we're guessing, I think that is something that faculty can understand. They are data people. So using the data that we have to be able to show why we're doing what we're doing. This is our strategy. These are the people that we're trying to reach. These are the people that we don't know. How can you help us? All of that goes back to communication, which I think is the number one tool. If you call communication a tool, a skill, it's the number one skill to having a great, to having a great partnership.
And I love that you, reference the data and sharing impact and telling those stories. And Alejandro mentioned the ADRP conference that we attended recently. And in another session, an author that spoke said that if a fundraiser is meeting with a donor to ask for more money and they have not yet explained how they use their last gift, they're over asking. And that was also another point that really resonated with me, and that made sense because 80% of donors today want to see proof of impact before they are comfortable continuing to support an organization. So I want to talk a little bit about fundraisers and the confidence that advancement offices can instill in a fundraiser by ensuring they have these partnerships well outlined, that they have the right systems in place, that all of the processes are tight, and how that can be really transformative and powerful for the fundraiser in having those conversations with donors to raise more money.
Yeah, Chelsea, I think this is, we talk about silos all the time, and I think it's now become cliche, but it's true that we exist in silos. And sometimes the way, Alejandro, you kind of said it earlier with like the big fences and good neighbors, sometimes that's about boundaries, and that's totally understandable and okay, because we all do have really, individualized roles in helping to raise money. And the more we understand one another, the more we can actually fully understand the full process of what happens when someone makes a gift, all the way through to, stewarding that gift, the better we all are, and the better we can show up for donors, and honestly for the university, because we can be transparent. We can actually articulate what the process looks like. And I feel like our ability, and honestly, in another one of my mistakes and learning from a failure, I think so often I was trying to protect my team from getting overly involved in, the academic side. There were a lot of times where, and honestly, it's 56 departments and programs. Like, there's a lot to get involved in. When your mission is to raise money, you have to find the balance between being out talking to donors and internally understanding the organization. And so it does take boundaries and focus. And I think the more that you do understand the whole process of fundraising, the more that you understand fund administration, the more that you understand the scholarships and loans process, what happens, with students and how do they get the money, what happens after they get the money, who on the campus side is actually administering those funds. Those things are actually really important for fundraisers to know, because it's the stuff that donors need to know. It's the things that, we can say we have a process, we have a system. And I think all of that takes time. So being a little bit patient, if you're new, I think you got to focus on being able to get out there and have a conversation. That's where you gain the most confidence, is by doing it, by talking to people, by getting in the door, by having more meetings with potential donors. And then understanding the internal processes and programs. It takes time, But I do think it is really critical to gain that full understanding, and being able to just articulate to staff, hey, this is going to be a process. And I promise you, at some point, you will feel fully confident. But for now, if you don't know, ask. Like, it's okay to show up with a donor and say, I don't know, but I will find out. It is okay. And in fact, it's like one of the best ways to actually follow up. You do not have to have all the answers. It is okay to not know something. You just got to be curious enough to figure it out so you can follow up.
And feel confident next time you're making an ask that everything is going to trickle through and happen in the way that you're telling the donor it will. And so it's not only building confidence within your partner relationships, but also with your for your fundraisers to feel confident when they're asking donors for money, but also then building confidence between the organization and the donors, where the donors are really feeling like, when I give money to this organization, it's used in the way I expected, and I'm seeing the impact outcomes that I expected as well.
Absolutely.
Are there any other benefits that come to mind, or great outcomes that you can think of when this relationship is strong between the advancement teams and the academic partners?
I think that it makes everybody better. I think it makes every experience with donors better. I think it makes the university better and stronger. I feel like, it's maybe an underrated part of fundraising, having that relationship, that internal relationship, defined and strong. I think it's easy to focus on the donor side, and because it's super important, like I said, it's your goal, to get out and to talk to donors. And when you have a really thoughtful partnership with your campus leaders, it shows. It is actually, it provides more confidence for everybody, because when a donor can see that you're on the same page and that you're all thought partners, I think people can feel that. So I do hope that we can get a little bit more thoughtful about our partnerships with academic leaders, and really help them to understand their role in fundraising, and define what makes a meaningful, effective partnership between the university and advancement.
And I think there's also opportunity in the advancement teams, understanding how the work that we're doing in fundraising is contributing to our partner goals. So helping with faculty and student recruitment and retention, student completion rates, helping to boost enrollment. So filling in funding gaps. I mean, the list goes on, but it's a two-way street, right? And making sure that our partners understand how to support us and we understand how to support them. And truly the best partnerships are those where there's that mutual value being derived for both groups. So I could not agree more that, and I love that you mentioned it's kind of underrated, because for so long we really focused on the raising of the money, but the rest of it is just as equally important, because if we aren't spending our donor funding appropriately and effectively, then is the raising of it all for nothing? So I think it's a critical balance, as you've mentioned.
And the longevity of some of these gifts make this problem, like compoundly more complex, right? Because you're dealing with potentially some endowments that exist forever. And Jen, as you called out, turnover and churn is a very big thing in our industry. And whether you have a very strong industry partner day one of that gift, does that guarantee that in year 5 you will have that same partner, right? So making sure you depend on your processes rather than specific relationship within a person, because that person might not be around for the longevity of the gift. In fact, most likely they won't, is key. So I love the emphasis on let's focus on the processes. Let's focus on what are the tools that we need to be successful, so that we don't have to rely on one of really good champions. Always good to have them, but probably not best practice to depend on them.
Yeah, I think, Alejandro, when I'm working with academic leaders, something that I try to emphasize is that representation of the university, that you are in everyone's mind, you are the university. You are showing up as the entire organization, which is a lot of pressure, but it also means that you have to be open, and we always say you have to be generous to get generous. So showing up with a generous, curious heart and being willing to listen to what this person cares about beyond your school or college, because a lot of people have a lot of different interests and they want to make a difference in all kinds of ways. So not assuming that just because this person majored in engineering means that they want to give to engineering is just one super simple way to show up on behalf of the whole university and being really generous and curious, versus showing up just, representing your school or college. That's just like one really practical way to help campus leaders to know that they are representing this big entire organization to somebody who wants that connection. And like you said, Alejandro, maybe wants it, for decades, or to leave a legacy that outlives them. And so that always goes beyond just the development director and the dean.
Jenna, I wish we had 4 full podcast episodes of time to talk together, because and I know Alejandro too, we so enjoy all of our conversations, and it's been so great chatting with you today. So thank you for sharing all of your expert insights. It was really a wonderful conversation. And in closing here, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, thank you for having me. And I would love to have 4 more podcast conversations with you. You all are, I love that you're doing amazing things for this industry. And I feel like anytime you can introduce a tool, a concept, an idea, a new way of doing things to help this industry that is based on like magic, philanthropy is magic. I feel like we're making a huge difference, and so thank you for the work that you're doing. I just hope that for all of the people who are listening who are in advancement, you all recognize that you are doing amazing things. You could do anything with the skills that you have, but you chose to work in philanthropy, and super grateful for the work that you're doing. And I know that it is not easy. So thank you for everything, and keep on keeping on. You're doing great things.
Thanks, Jenna. And if folks want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's just generouschange.com is our website, and you can reach out to me at jenna@generouschange.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Jenna. And to our listeners, thank you all for tuning in. Keep an eye out for more episodes of Impact Unplugged to hear more insights from experts like Jenna.
If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. And remember, for more great content and insights, visit our website at fundminer.com and follow us on LinkedIn. Thanks again, Jenna.
Thanks,
Thank
Jenna.
you.